I'm honestly scared for my life.
Well, I guess now you know how salespeople feel every time you walk into a store. I mean, people like you are what's wrong with society, but let me see what I can do.
Oh my god, I think he's busting down the door. Please help me.
You would not want to be the repair person dealing with that, because chances are you're going to have some sort of problem, aren't you, Karen?
What? That's not my name. Is this even 911? Can I speak to someone else?
And there we have it. 45 seconds, record time. I'll tell you what, I'm going to put you on hold for a second while I call Guinness Book of Records and see if they have the slot available for world's biggest Karen. Hello? Okay, Karen, I know you're not used to listening to people, but I'm gonna be sending something to your phone. It's a number that I want you to call.
What? Why am I calling someone else?
This is a friend of mine who specializes in attitude adjustments, something that I highly recommend you do.
Attitude adjustment? Someone's trying to murder me.
Just talking to a girl here who's done nothing wrong ever and nothing's ever her fault.
Why aren't you helping me?
I'll tell you what, why don't we just call off every ongoing investigation and I'll send the entire police force to your house because this is Karen's world and we're all just living in it.
Oh my god, he's in the house.
And we'll send cops from other neighborhoods too so you can have your own personal police force. Would that make you happy, Your Majesty?
I bet you there's a real life version of that happening in New York City. And seriously, when will the Karens get used to the new normal? Welcome back, beautiful and amazing human beings. This is Luke Radowski of WeAreChange.org. A lot of very important, tumultuous news to get into, as of course we have more troubling developments in Afghanistan, some absolutely horrible legislation proposed in the United States, while of course we will be focusing on the FDA in this particular video. But before we get into that, plus a lot more, the clip that we played in the beginning of this broadcast is by Ryan Long. He does absolutely incredible work. He deserves a lot more subscribers. And if you want to watch the full video that we played you a short snippet of, you could click the link in our description, as luckily YouTube has not figured out yet how to ban comedy and satire. But that could be mainly because almost everything's a joke, including the current presidency of the United States, who in a recent press conference forgot the name of the FEMA director and literally said, sorry, who are you? As we're just finding out more details about the utter disaster that has been the president's Afghanistan policy, as we're learning through these very unorganized, almost deliberately sabotaged moves by the United States, that these actions haven't just cost the countless of lives of Afghanis, could have also cost the life of SAS British troops that literally ended up trapped because of Biden's policies and needed to be evacuated in the middle of the night. Those people got away while there are still thousands of American citizens that the Biden administration is not really prioritizing, to say the least. I think that's a very fair description, as we have more troubling developments from that region, as the Taliban announced that it is warning the United States to fully leave Afghanistan by August 31st, or they will provoke a reaction. The Taliban wants them out, including from the airport, and they are announcing that they are sticking by the August 31st deadline, while, of course, the United Kingdom, France, and Germany are urging Biden to extend this deadline in order to be able to safely lift as many allies and citizens out of that country. While thousands of U.S. citizens are still finding it impossible to get to the airport, the administration is allowing random refugees to board, as it's being announced that 20,000 people are still waiting to be flown out, while 10,400 people were already flown out on 28 U.S. flights. On average, there's 371 people leaving per flight, as the United States is promising to take up 22,000 Afghan refugees, as of course they can't get the paperwork right. And this is becoming more of an utter mess that the Taliban is demanding be over on August 31st. And it really looks like they're calling the shots here right now, as of course the Taliban was just given 75,000 war vehicles, 208 airplanes and helicopters, with an additional estimated 600,000 rifles, machine guns, shotguns, and other weaponry that your tax dollars paid for. That is your government at work, who's also dictating almost every aspect of your existence for your, quote, health and well-being. Now, a lot of people all over the world are realizing just how absolutely incompetent or criminal some government agencies are, and that's why there have been major protests against them, like we're seeing in London, in Amsterdam, in France, that has seen its 6th straight major demonstration in that country against a lot of the absolutely totalitarian and draconian measures that governments are trying to institute, while literally creating a domestic papers, police, passport system that will control and track, trace, and database almost everywhere you go. Seems like a worthy protest. Meanwhile, here in the United States, protesters are literally fighting each other, as there was major clashes in Portland where the police announced that they will be taking a hands-off approach, standing back as they usually have been doing anyway in major cities, and major chaos ensued as the divide and conquer agenda was perpetrated, making people fight each other over petty differences, while of course ignoring the true source of a lot of the problems that we face. So yeah, that's happening. Well, at least we still have some semblance of independent media that still exists for now. But hey, we also have Uncensored.com, by the way, which is absolutely thriving and kicking major buttocks, as we have a major video coming out today that will talk about majorly important government policies that sadly we cannot discuss here on this platform. We will be discussing them all exclusively unfiltered on Uncensored.com. Lots of very important things to get into that sadly we could only express on our own platform, which we are growing and expanding. If you haven't checked out Uncensored.com, what are you waiting for? Click the link down in the description below, and you could be a part of the ever-growing We Are Change community that seriously is stepping up things a notch. Now, just jumping into our main topic, I wanted to talk about the FDA. Why do I want to talk about the FDA? No reason at all, but I think just maybe at this moment in time, it would be interesting to fully understand how this regulatory, quote, quasi-government body actually works, since I think it's important for many people to understand that the FDA is, in part, funded, financed, and exists because of companies that pay for it. And as theconversation.com says, quote, the Food and Drug Administration has moved from an entirely taxpayer-funded entity to one increasingly funded by user fees paid for by manufacturers that are being regulated. Today, close to 45% of its budget comes from these user fees that companies pay when they apply for approval of a device or substance. Now, this is a stark difference to how the FDA actually operated when it was started originally in 1938, that allowed this new government body authority to, quote, protect the American consumer. And to be intellectually honest, there were some cases where the FDA actually did that, specifically with the case of the thalidomide substance that was used in the 1950s. But over the years, increasingly, the agency has become more funded by the people that they are supposed to be regulated, which some even mainstream media organizations like The Independent raise serious concerns about with their article that was titled, Majority of Doctors Who Oversee FDA Drug Approval Receive Payment from Companies They Monitor, specifically highlighting some lax rules and protocols that could potentially lead to some serious conflicts of interest. And some people have even speculated that some of the decisions made by the FDA have come with, quote, strings attached when it comes to big money financing a lot of these, quote, studies, these, quote, findings. Some critics of the agency even go as far as to say that the FDA is addicted to, quote, drug money, and that they have been playing favors in the market towards, of course, the companies that they get the most amount of money from. Now, that, of course, is an assertion made by some, but it's also important to note that there is a revolving door with many FDA government officials and big pharma companies. There was even an incident where an FDA whistleblower came forward and talked about some of the corruption in this entire industry. And I think, at least personally myself, according to my own personal opinion, there are some ethical issues to address here when it comes to big pharma, its money, and its larger influence of not just one regulatory body, but a lot of government that they seem to be investing in. And especially this is true on the backdrop over the opioid epidemic that absolutely shattered and destroyed the lives of average middle Americans that, of course, were betrayed not only by the government, not only by Big Pharma, not only by the mainstream media, but also their own personal doctors that were paid and incentivized in order to push unnecessary Big Pharma meds that absolutely destroyed their lives. And it's important to note here that the people at the government, at the FDA, absolutely failed, and according to some, even participated in this larger scam that has led to the human devastation of middle America. The person that Biden announced to be top head of the FDA now is Dr. Janet Woodcock, and she was the one presiding over what some people call, what The Guardian is calling, one of the worst regulatory agencies' failures ever, which of course led to hundreds of thousands of death and the absolute destruction of quality of life. There was even a letter formed by 28 groups and organizations filled with medical professionals and doctors accusing the current head of the FDA of dereliction of duty, allowing opioid manufacturers to spend years disseminating false claims, lies, that its painkillers were less addictive and more effective than they really were, which, as of course we know it, claimed the lives of over 500,000 people. And when we look at the opioid epidemic, we see absolutely blatant failures by the FDA that some people accuse of even being criminally involved in this entire scheme while choosing to look the other way, while knowing that there was tremendous human harm being caused. And it's important to note here that they approved a lot of these opioid drugs, told you that they were safe to use when there was limited data, flawed trials, and there was absolutely no merit at all to approve these devastating drugs that wreaked havoc on the U.S. population. It's also important to note here that the FDA has been accused of manipulating the media as well, while of course pushing an agenda that benefits themselves and the companies that give them money. Now, why am I talking about the FDA today? Well, absolutely no reason at all. If you're a YouTube moderator, no reason. I just thought, randomly, even though it's not kind of timely, it was kind of important to talk about this. And in totally unrelated news that has nothing to do with this, we're gonna keep moving on in our news scheduled. And today we're just gonna randomly talk about the other news happening today as we get the announcement that the FDA just approved the Pfizer procedure, lifting, of course, the emergency use authorization which previously allowed this procedure to be allowed. Now with the FDA officially giving their stamp of approval for this, you could bet your bottom dollar that there's going to be a major push right now by local, state, and federal agencies to mandate this procedure. And some people haven't even waited, as New York City just announced that they're making this procedure mandatory for the over 143,000 education department employees. There is no way to opt out. There is no way to even get tested. Instead, there's no medical exemptions, as of course some doctors say that people shouldn't be taking this if they have allergies to this, if they have other severe medical issues which may lead to complications with this, if they have natural antibodies. None of that matters to New York City, as even the U.S. Pentagon announced that all U.S. service members will soon be required to do the same. And this is only the beginning of the mandates, as of course there will be a way bigger push for everyone, including small children under the age of 12, to get this procedure. And there's even a bill proposed in the U.S. Congress that is going to make it mandatory to even fly domestically. Yes, there's a bill right now pushed forward that might pass that will mandate this procedure if you wish to use an airplane domestically here in the United States. And that to me is absolutely absurd, just as absurd as the statements by former NSA and CIA head General Hayden that announced that he wanted to send MAGA supporters who don't take this procedure on planes to Afghanistan. And we have to understand that these are some of the politicians that we are dealing with here that are becoming more and more forceful with your human body and what they want you to do with it. Now, even though the FDA made an approval today of this procedure, it's also important to note that the studies in safety and efficacy that it mentions won't be completed until 2023 and 2026. Yes, several of the studies looking into how effective, looking into how safe, still haven't been done. They need to take a long time in order to do so. And it's important to note here that they have not been completed. A lot of the science is still not figured out here. A lot of the data is still being very poorly collected. In my opinion, we need more science, we need more data, we need more studies, and we at least need more of an honest conversation to fully be able to talk about what's really going on right now and its larger consequences. For right now, we can't do that. I have a lot more to say. I'm going to be saying it specifically on LukeUncensored.com. I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for you guys actively watching these videos, sharing them with your friends and family members, and that's the only reason I'm here. Simply double-clicking the URL, sending it to a random person means the world to me and keeps us still here alive somehow. I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for you. This is why I love you guys. Stay tuned for more here on wearechange.org.